Can we talk for a minute about our Integrating Heart and Mind workshop?
Absolutely. I'm excited. It's coming up in the fall of 2024.
I'm so excited. We changed the format to make it more accessible to people with like work schedules and personal schedules. And so this time we're going to do it 3 hours on a Friday afternoon or evening, depending on where you're at, and 5 hours on Saturday for 2 different weeks in September.
Yeah, it's so great. Like if you're finding yourself stuck in like sticky bad patterns or having communication issues or something like that, or if you want to just like get closer and trust yourself or your partner more, this is the workshop for you.
Yeah, and individuals are welcome, couples are welcome. If you're interested in really thinking through how to serve yourself well inside of your relationships, then we've built a workshop that will support you in finding the ways that are just right for you.
To sign up, head over to our website at whydoesmypartner.com/events.
We hope you'll join us.
Hey everyone, Al Hoberman here, editor of the Why Doesn't My Partner podcast. Today's conversation covers the topic of sexual intimacy in partnership. So if that affects how or when or if you choose to listen, we wanted to make sure you knew that ahead of time. All right, enjoy.
Welcome to the Why Does My Partner podcast.
I'm Jules.
I'm Vicky.
And I'm Rebecca. We're your hosts. We're also couples therapists and messy humans bumbling through our own relationships every day.
We met at a training, and our secret sauce is that we and our partners became fast friends. Between us, we have more than 40 years of experience holding hard relational questions with our clients. We're going to bring those questions here.
And together, we're going to take a stab at answering those questions. This podcast is not a substitute for couples therapy. If something you hear in this podcast stirs something deep within you about your relationship, reach out to a couples therapist in your area.
We also love to hear your questions, so don't forget to go over to whydoesmypartner.com to leave a question of your own. Here's today's question. Why doesn't my partner want to make love to me? Oh, that's so freaking tender.
Isn't it?
Why doesn't my partner want to make love to me? I'm hearing so many things inside of this question.
Yeah, go. What'd you hear?
So the first thing I'm hearing is this like sadness and like, what is not enough about me? Why am I being rejected?
That's what I heard.
But then another part is also like, what kind of pressure am I putting on my partner? Like, if I do the U-turn, right? The person asking the question, there's this piece about like, I mean, some people are asexual. Some people have different sexual desires or drives, right? So, so there's also something about some kind of expectation lingering inside this question that I'm hearing. Are you both hearing that too?
Yeah, for sure. And
I do when you say it. I didn't originally.
Well, sex is a very vulnerable thing for many people, right? And so I think that it's common to take personally difficult periods, difficult moments, whatever that looks like for you. Whether it's a moment where it feels like there's no initiation, or moments of you initiating and then being rejected. It lands as rejection when actually maybe the person is like, oh, I'm not in the mood right now. Or they may be saying something that's more about them. So I think it's really easy. I'm thinking about a couple's case that I had last year where when they started to initiate, things would be going fine, and then all of the excitement would go. Right. And so the story that the partner
who was losing his erection was telling himself was that I'm not good enough. I can't do this. I'm not performing, right? And the person on the receiving end was saying, well, he must not want me. I must not be attractive to him anymore. Well, I've gained weight. So maybe it's that. Maybe I'm causing this.
Yeah.
So notice in this story, both partners, both of these dudes were taking it personally.
Yeah.
This moment that kept occurring between them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what's really common too is once that gets so painful, we often will go to blame. Well, you're superficial. Well, I'm thinking about in this particular case that I'm talking about, it was two gentlemen. And so one of them was talking to the other one in a very harsh way about internalized homophobia. And this is your problem. And you haven't worked through your stuff around your sexuality. And if you had, this wouldn't be happening. So instead of staying in the shame, notice the contempt that was pointed in, he then turned it out towards his partner.
Yeah.
So I wonder what happens even as you're listening to this, even in your body, as you think about how likely it is for you to take sexual information personally. And when I say information, what I mean is the gesture, the look, the initiation, the lack thereof, the no thanks, not tonight.
The way your partner touches you.
Right.
Are their eyes open or closed? Right. Like all of these tiny little micro pieces of how connection happens or doesn't happen. Right.
Yeah.
And the stories that we make up about what it's supposed to be, in quotes, supposed to be, and the expectations that we and maybe society hold on, like, when I ask the question, why doesn't my partner want to make love to me? Am I asking it like, why doesn't my partner want to make love to me 7 days a week? And why doesn't my partner want to make love to me once a week, twice a month, 4 times a year? Like what is the expectation inside of this?
And what stories are we making up? Because I've actually had this happen with a couple who was having quite a lot of sex.
Right.
So I'm thinking about this woman who is saying, and it's the eyes closed thing, I know he doesn't want to make love to me because he's not looking at me. We are having sex, but he doesn't want to make love to me. And I know that because he's not looking at me.
Right. And I've heard it too, like, well, my partner looks at porn, so that means they don't love me. They don't want to be with me. They want to, right? So there's a lot of different ways that people contextualize this kind of question. Right. And I think looking at those pieces are just as important as like the initial question, maybe even more important to look at that context.
Exactly. That's why I'm asking you to be with yourself for a moment and just be with what is it that comes up in your body?
Yeah.
What is it that comes up in your heart space and your belly space? If you're not a body person and somatic tracking really isn't your thing, what do you notice floating kind of in the back of your mind as you're thinking about, it's common for lots of people to take sexual interactions personally.
Yeah.
And what did you learn in your history, in your family, in different exposure you've had to romantic movies or pornography? What stories do you have? Because they all have meaning that you're writing on. And I don't know about you ladies, but I feel like many of my clients and certainly me in my history, I've had a lot of tenderness. It feels somehow more vulnerable often for us to talk about the stories we're making up about the sexual interactions with our partner.
It's like the most vulnerable thing in the world. I remember there was this time my partner and I went to this kind of like erotic workshop. It was one of the first workshops like that we had gone to together.
Mm-hmm.
And we were, being prompted with questions for discussion and exercises to explore. And oh my goodness, the vulnerability of like actually like playing with and talking about and connecting over the things that like the little things that we were struggling with, that I was internally struggling with, and having to share that with him. That was the hardest workshop I've ever done and one of the most growthful, but it was the hardest workshop I've ever done in my life, because talking about this stuff, like really talking about this stuff, like sex is exposing. Being naked with someone is exposing. Being intimate with someone and talking about sex is like, it's taking it sometimes for many of us to another level where we don't really have languaging tools, like the muscle memory and the knowledge of how to do these conversations in a way where we can fumble our way through and we don't have to be right all the time.
Totally.
What was that just there, Jules?
You know
was
what
it when
I'm
I
thinking
said
about?
Fumbling?
Yeah, but you know what I'm thinking about is what thoughts do we have for our listeners? Because of the level of vulnerability that's true for lots of people. And if you're not one of those people, great, go forth and ask your partner what's going on.
Why don't you want to make love to me?
Or even just notice before you do that that's a story you made up in your head and now you believe it. And so maybe it may not be true. But I'm wondering what that look you just saw was, what can we help people with to maybe make this a little bit more titrated so that people can take little steps into more vulnerability around this, rather than feeling like they have to jump into some huge revealing exercise or conversation.
Yeah. And so I think even in you asking the question, you may have answered a part of it. Because one of the first U-turns that's coming up for me is that our listeners maybe could take this away to say, here's the story I'm making up. Right? So now there's the self-observation. So I'm making up a story that you don't want to make love to me. Does that resonate for you? Is there something in there that we should talk about?
Yeah. And before you even say that, could you be curious with you about whether or not your story is actually true? And if you have trouble with this one, I really like in moments like this to lean into work of a lady named Byron Katie. She has these 4 questions that I think could be really handy when we're really locked into a story.
Yeah.
So it goes like this. So let's say I've made up a story that my partner does not want to make love to me. Right? Now, that story comes from all sorts of evidence. I have really good evidence for it. He doesn't make eye contact with me, and he said no twice last week. But then when he did, it didn't feel like his heart was in it. There's my evidence. Okay. So now I'm in that space, and I let myself really feel how that story is landing in me. And then I say, is that true? My partner does not want to make love to me. Is that true? Answer how you will. It's not my answer, it's your answer, right? Okay. Are you absolutely sure that it's true? If you believe that story, what do you do next? That's question 3. If you could not think that thought, who would you be? That's question 4. So those can really free up some curiosity and loosen that story's grip on your mind. Something Byron Katie says that I think is a fun way to look at it, and I think it has some accuracy in it too. She says, it's not my experience that we let thoughts go. It's my experience that thoughts let us go. And I think that's how it feels inside.
Yeah.
I don't think she's crazy for saying that.
I don't
No,
think she's
that's actually a
crazy
really
either.
good way to phrase it.
I think that there's something about the thoughts are often driven by like emotion. The thoughts are often driven by other information that's coming in, that's being processed within our system, within our body, and being interpreted. And then that's leading to the thought, right? The thought isn't the first piece of this.
Right. Totally. And it can. Can we get into the really complex positive feedback loop? Because I can think that thought, and then my sensations answer the thought with a thing, and then my brain makes up a feeling based on my entire history about the sensation I just had that actually came from the thought in my head. So it can go both ways.
Okay.
But here's the thing I want us to really take home and hold ourselves with great grace and openness around. Your brain cannot stop making up a story. You're never going to stop making up a story. You cannot believe them. You cannot attach to them. You cannot act from them. You can create that pause. But what you will never do, your brain is a meaning-making organ. That is how it decides where to send your blood and, oxygen resources. So you're never going to stop it from making up meaning.
Speaking of this, there's this person on like all the socials, TikTok, Insta, all those things.
Sure.
Elise Myers. I don't know if anyone is familiar with Elise, but so Elise is this fabulous, like, human person, comedian, songwriter, all of those things. And one of her little jingles is, just because you think it doesn't mean that it's true. Your brain's a little bitch and likes to lie to you.
Oh, I love that.
I love it
too. That's exactly right. So just because you thought a thing does not mean that your story is accurate. And if we get into this from a bit of a being right battle place, where I start out with, why don't you want to make love to me? And then my partner says, I do want to make love to you. Now I'm going to be in being right battle. And I'm going to say, no, you don't. And then he's going to say, yes, I do. And then I'm going to say, no, you don't. I can tell because you weren't looking at me. And he's going to go, what are we talking about? And why am I feeling hot? There's adrenaline happening. There's tingling all over my arms.
That is so common.
Why am I feeling attacked?
Yeah.
Right.
Because you're being attacked.
Right. So one way to titrate it is to really loosen up that grip your story has on you. And notice that we could enter it. Once we do, we can enter this with curiosity.
Yeah.
And we could start having a conversation about, like, what do you want making love to feel like?
I want to even
close is our space to that.
And I want to even nudge us a little bit. I think curiosity is such a good entry point, and it can also become a little agenda-y, right? And so something I'm learning is to move towards interest, right? Like if I move away a little bit from the agenda of I'm curious, I want to know why, tell me what you're thinking, into the interest of I'm interested in making love to you. Are there any roadblocks to this? What might they be?
Yeah. You know what? Another thing that really is helpful for some folks is to write something small. Don't write 18-page letters. Friends reference for anyone who missed it.
Plant seeds with your letters.
Plant seeds with your letters. But you could write, like, we could say, write a 2-sentence answer to 3 questions, and we'll trade them. So, or 4 questions. If you're in a partnership, not a throuple, you could each come up with 2 questions, and then you trade. You could all answer all 4 questions. But keep your answers to no more than 2 sentences, and no run-on sentences allowed. So it's a way to cheating, basically. Right, you're not allowed to write paragraphs. I'm basically
in 20 words or
containing
less.
you a little bit, so that remember that when we're trying to do titrate it, it can be helpful to share things softly. It can be helpful to enter with interest, like you're saying, to be curious about whether or not the thoughts in your own head are true, to share things in less information way, contain yourself a little bit around that. And if your partner comes to you with these kind of questions, to know that they might be coming with a little bit of tenderness and to ask, is there anything I can do to help you feel like this is a more trusted space right now?
Oh, I love that.
So if my partner came to me and said, oh, I feel like I need to have a hard conversation. I was feeling kind of weird, but I want to talk about sex. One of my first moves.
Is there anything that I can do to make this a more trusted space for you? That right there is like meeting vulnerability with vulnerability.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Exactly.
Yeah. So let's land there.
Right. We have some tools. Go forth. Talk about sex. But in short bursts.
I was going to say go forth and prosper. Sorry.
All right. And this brings us to the end of our mini episode. We'll be back to you with season 4 soon.
And we already have so many episodes planned for season 4.
Yep.
It's going to be a super exciting season. So stay tuned.
We look forward to seeing you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
That wraps up this week's episode. Join us again next week for another Why Does My Partner?
We hope that you continue to listen wherever you get your audio and that you'll follow the show.
To go deeper, join us at one of our workshops. You'll find our next date at whydoesmypartner.com.
Did you know you can ask us your questions?
Your questions are relational gold.
Go to whydoesmypartner.com to either write in or record your question for a future episode.